In this lesson, we will study possibly the biggest item that makes Revit rock. That's called the project browser. Revit is a self-contained modeling machine. When you go into your model in the morning, you stay there all day. Revit is CAD, 3D, drawings, and Windows Explorer all wrapped up in one. The objective of this exercise is to look at what views are and how the project browser organizes them. To get started, views are everywhere in Revit. These little guys here are actually representatives of views. They're elevation markers. Let's zoom in on this elevation marker here that seems to be in my wall and take a look. What happens is this. This is a live view of the model. The problem is this little guy is in the way. It'd behoove us to move it. If you select the big square here, you're going to see that a bunch of other views kind of light up. We can turn a view on, or if you uncheck it, you delete that view. Be very careful. In Revit, everything is part of the model. Think about this. If you delete a view, you're deleting an elevation. That elevation could have dimensions on it, drafting lines, notes. And if you delete it, you're deleting it from the project. It's not like you can recover it in Windows Explorer. It's gone. So be very deliberate when you're deleting views. And I'll delete this one. Now, if I hit Escape once, go ahead and select just the little hat. The hat is the actual view. The box is the actual view elevation. What we need to do to move it is we need to pick a window around it. And we're going to pick a box, not a crossing window, but a box. You can tell the difference between the line type composition. I'm going to pick a window around this. I'm going to hover my mouse over the middle of it, hold down my pick button, and just move it out of the wall. Speaking of the quick access toolbar, what I'd like you to do now is come up and click on this little house. If you hover over it, that's the default 3D view. Check out our building. Pretty cool, huh? Go down to the View Control toolbar and let's find another function. It's called Visual Style. Click the Visual Style button and go to Realistic. Revit will then change the view to realistic. So when we zoom in, bricks look like bricks, concrete looks like concrete. There's that little cap I wanted you to avoid, and there's a masonry belt underneath that. The problem is now, how do I get back to my other view? Well, that's where the project browser comes into play. See right here, this is the project browser. Above it you have your properties, below it you have your project browser. It's broken down into floor plans, ceiling plans, 3D views, elevations, and everything else you're going to need. What I'd like you to do is double-click on Level 1. Notice that it takes us right back to the Level 1. Suppose we wanted to see an elevation of our building. Let's zoom out a little bit, zoom in on this elevation marker, and double-click on the little hat. Notice now that we're in an elevation. Also, if you hit Control-Tab, you can filter around to the views that are open. Not a bad way to get to your model. Also, the project browser is a database within itself. If you right-click on Views All, and you go to Type Properties, you can literally change the different types of views, like discipline, if something's not on a sheet, by phase, or whatever you want. Hit Cancel. Let's scroll down a little bit in the project browser and see what we're looking at here. 3D views, there's a default 3D view. If you double-click that, that's the view you were just in. Elevations, east, north, south, west, are the default elevations. We'll certainly be adding a lot of elevations in this course. If we scroll down a little more, we have schedules, sheets, families, groups. We'll explain all this later. What I'd like you to do is double-click on Level 1 to go back to the floor plan. Click into the drawing area and type ZA. This will zoom all. One other thing I'd like to show you is the fact that every time we clicked on a view, it opened it up. Revit has these views open, but if you have too many views open, sometimes it's just hard to navigate through the model. If you look at the Quick Access toolbar, you'll see that there's a little window here. It's called Switch Windows. Go ahead and hit the drop-down, and it shows you the windows that are currently open. If you click on this button here, this closes hidden windows. The next thing you're going to do is probably the most important thing you'll ever do in Revit, and that's click on this little guy here. That's the Save button. Save your work often. Revit can produce some pretty huge models. You don't want to crash. You will crash. I wish I could say you won't, but you're gonna. Save all the time. Now that's a great way to navigate through a project. Revit does a fantastic job of organizing the model. Just remember, Revit's set up as a pile of views. If you remember that, you're going to be all set.